General Audience number 81 of May 5th, 1982. In responding to the questions of the Pharisees about marriage and its indissolubility, Christ appealed to the beginning, that is, to its original institution by the Creator. Given that his interlocutors appealed to the law of Moses that provided for the possibility of the so-called certificate of divorce, he answered, "Because of the hardness of your heart, Moses allowed you to divorce your wives. But from the beginning it was not so." Matthew chapter 19, verse 8. After the dialogue with the Pharisees, the disciples of Christ turned to him with the following words, quote, "If this is the condition of man in relation to woman, it is not advantageous to marry." He answered them, quote, "Not all can understand it, but only those to whom it has been granted. For there are eunuchs who were born this way from their mother's womb. There are some who were made eunuchs by men, and there are others who made themselves eunuchs for the kingdom of heaven. Let anyone understand this who can." Matthew chapter 19, verse 10 through 12. Christ's words allude doubtlessly to a conscious and voluntary renunciation of marriage. Such a renunciation is possible only when one admits an authentic consciousness of the value constituted by the spousal disposition of masculinity and femininity for marriage. In order for man to be fully aware of what he is choosing, continence for the kingdom, he must also be aware of what he is renouncing. The consciousness at stake here is exactly the consciousness of the value in the ideal sense. Nevertheless, this consciousness is completely realistic. In this way, Christ certainly calls for a mature choice. The form in which he expresses the call to continence for the kingdom of heaven proves it, without a doubt. Yet, a fully conscious renunciation of the value mentioned above is not enough. Renunciation that is an affirmation. In the light of Christ's words, and also in the light of the whole authentic Christian tradition, one can deduce that this renunciation is at the same time a particular form of affirmation of the value from which the unmarried person consistently abstains by following the evangelical counsel. This may seem like a paradox. We know, however, that paradox goes hand in hand with many statements of the gospel, and often with the most eloquent and profound. If we accept this meaning of the call to continence for the kingdom of heaven, we draw a correct conclusion when we maintain that the realization of this call serves also, in a particular way, to confirm the spousal meaning of the human body in its masculinity and femininity. The renunciation of marriage for the kingdom of God at the same time highlights that meaning in all its inner truth and in all its personal beauty. One can say that this renunciation on the part of individual persons, men and women, is in some sense indispensable for the clearer recognition of the same spousal meaning of the body in the whole ethos of human life, and above all in the ethos of conjugal and family life. Thus, although continence for the kingdom of heaven, virginity, celibacy, orients the life of the persons who freely choose it toward a way outside the common way of conjugal and family life, it nevertheless does not remain without significance for this life, for its style, value, in evangelical authenticity. We do not forget that the one and only key for understanding the sacramentality of marriage is the spousal love of Christ for the church. See Ephesians 5, chapter 22 to 23. Of Christ, who was son of the Virgin, who himself was a virgin, that is, a eunuch for the kingdom of heaven, in the most perfect sense of the term. We will have to take up this subject again at a later time. At the end of these reflections, one concrete problem still remains. In the person to whom the call to continence for the kingdom has been granted, how is such a call formed on the basis of the consciousness of the spousal meaning of the body and its masculinity and femininity, and further as a fruit of such consciousness? How is it formed, or rather transformed? This question is equally important from the viewpoint of the theology of the body and from the viewpoint of the development of the human personality, which is both personalistic and charismatic in character. If we wanted to answer this question exhaustively in the dimension of all the aspects and all the concrete problems it includes, one would have to devote a special study to the relation between marriage and virginity and between marriage and celibacy. This, however, would go beyond the limits of the present considerations. Remaining within the sphere of Christ's words, according to Matthew chapter 19, verse 11 to 12, we should conclude our reflections with the following statement. First, while continence for the kingdom of heaven undoubtedly signifies a renunciation, this renunciation is at the same time an affirmation that flows from the discovery of the gift. That is, at the same time from the discovery of a new perspective of personally realizing oneself through a sincere gift of self. Au Gaudium et Spes 24:3. Therefore, this discovery stands in deep inner harmony with the sense of the spousal meaning of the body connected from the beginning with the masculinity or femininity of man as a personal subject. Second, although continence for the kingdom of heaven is a renunciation of marriage, which in the life of a man and a woman gives rise to the family, in no way can one see in it a negation of the essential value of marriage. On the contrary, continence indirectly serves to highlight what is most lasting and most profoundly personal in the conjugal vocation, what corresponds to the dimensions of temporality and at the same time in the perspective of the other world, to the dignity of the personal gift connected with the spousal meaning of the body in its masculinity and femininity. In this way, Christ's call to continence for the kingdom of heaven, which is correctly associated with the appeal to the future resurrection, see Matthew chapter 21, verses 24 to 30, Mark chapter 12, verse 18 to 27, and Luke chapter 20, verses 27 to 40, has a capital importance, not only for the Christian ethos and spirituality, but also for anthropology and for the whole theology of the body, which we are uncovering at its basis. We recall that when Christ appealed to the resurrection of the body in the other world, he said, according to the version of the three synoptic Gospels, quote, "For when they rise from the dead, they will take neither wife nor husband," Mark chapter 12, verse 25. These words, which we already analyzed earlier, are part of the whole of our considerations on the theology of the body and contribute to building it.